So, welcome everybody. Lovely to see you all, and welcome to those of you online. So, again, we're into this mind and this potential. We're halfway today, and we'll be talking primarily about the afflictions. It was going to be on Buddha nature, but then I changed it just to see how, because I think it runs a bit better with this change. So, we'll begin as we normally do by doing a short breathing meditation just to focus the mind and get ourselves present. Then we'll say some prayers together and then we'll begin the actual class. So please get yourself comfortable in your seat. Basically, this means that your back is straight, your shoulders are relaxed. You can place your hands wherever you like. And you can either keep your eyes open, close them completely, or keep them half open. And once you are comfortable in your seat, allow the body to breathe itself. And while the body breathes itself, I'd like you just to focus on the movements that are taking place with the exhalation and inhalation of breath. The body is relaxing and we are focused. With the body relaxed, the mind focused, it's very easy to imagine the presence of all the enlightened beings just above you in space. And it's just as easy to imagine you are surrounded by all sentient beings. You recollect what you have in common with other sentient beings. A wish for happiness, a wish to be free from suffering. And the understanding that neither of these two wishes has yet been accomplished. Our wishes, however, can be accomplished if we rely upon others who have actually brought an end to their suffering and have developed all of their good qualities, dependent upon teachings. So think that you want to develop your wisdom, your compassion, the sense of power and skill, to put an end to suffering and its causes for yourself and for everyone else. And then feeling as if the Buddha and his spiritual entourage are gazing down at you as you lead all beings into the practice of going for refuge. Join me in saying, I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. In response to this wish to become fully awakened for the benefit of others, lights and nectars stream out of the heart of the Buddha. They wash over you and over all the beings surrounding you. Every obstacle and hindrance to the development of wisdom and compassion and skill is washed away. The natural purity of the mind is revealed. And this purity is endowed with four boundless thoughts, which are directed to all the sentient beings surrounding you. And so you say, may all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be separated from the happiness that is without suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. In response to this wish, again, lights and nectars pour out the heart of the Buddha, washing over you and over all beings surrounding you. All hindrances and obstacles to the accomplishment of the four boundless thoughts are just swept away. And the mind is thoroughly infused with immeasurable love, compassion, empathic joy, and equanimity. With a sense of joy, you recollect the field of merit above you, the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, and wishing to accumulate more merit and to purify the mind completely, you say the seven-limb prayer. Reverently, I prostrate my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own and others' merits to the great enlightenment. Then recollect that all phenomena, which includes the merit field above you, yourself and all beings surrounding you, are all without an independent nature. And what exists does so in mere name. So prepare to offer your body, speech, mind, this world system, and your merit to accomplishing the goal of a non-abiding enlightenment for the benefit of others. And join me in offering the mandala and say, this ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. So release the offering, and the Buddha accepts it with joy. He looks down at you specifically, and you gaze up and you look into his eyes. You see that smile, you can see that the smile is pervaded with bliss. And you feel accepted and at ease. And in the field of merit surrounding the Buddha, the Bodhisattvas, the Arhats, the protectors, and so forth, all dissolve into light, which is absorbed into the Buddha. And then an emanation of the Buddha leaves his heart, moves through time and space, and comes to rest above the crown of your head, facing in the same direction you are. The emanation descends, entering the crown of your head, going down through your throat, and through your chest, and resting just above your heart. The radiance of the emanation expands, filling your body and mind with light. And the light goes out through the pores of your skin and fills the 10 directions of space. And every being which exists within space is touched by that light. and awoken into the fully awakened state. And with your next in-breath, the light begins to withdraw from the 10 directions of space, re-enters your heart, you feel the seat beneath you, you feel embodied once again, and you find yourself breathing normally and naturally. You understand that this meditation is one of imagination. Nevertheless, it has imprinted the mind with this process. I think it's put in place a condition for full awakening, which brings about the benefit of yourself and others. And just accept that that is the case. And then breathe in through your nostrils and exhale through your mouth. Allow your body to awaken and to move it around and give away your life. Okay, so let's begin the class. So, being the fifth class, we've covered a lot of the topics so far. We looked at the characteristics of mind. So mind is always experience. It's whatever happens to us. And its nature is clarity and awareness. So the term mind is just a term imputed to all these moments of clarity, meaning a non-physical something, awareness. We call that mind. And there are different levels of continuum and continua. So some have beginnings and ends, some have no beginnings and no ends, others have beginnings, no ends, no beginnings and ends. So we've got 4 types of continuum. And we look at some of the different divisions of mind. So we're looking at conception and perception, mental consciousness, sense awarenesses, and so forth. And last week we looked at minds and mental factors. To come up with all this information, I've been relying upon books like the ones you see here on screen. So perhaps the most in-depth book is this one here on the bottom row. Also called, I think this one's called The Mind, but it's
the foundation of the Indian Buddhist classic.
Yeah, Science and Buddhist Philosophy in the Indian Buddhist Classics, Volume 2, The Mind. But today, because we're going to be looking at some of the afflictions, I've put these other books up. So we've got one called Healing Anger by the Dalai Lama. And then right beside it, Practical Ethics, Profound Emptiness. That book's got a lot of really interesting things to say about anger and desirous attachment. Really good verses and really good practical application of an antidote. Yeah. And I should also say that that's the same case with Arya Deva's 400 stanzas. These 2 books are, as antidotes to attachment, desirous attachment, they're really good. Today, we're going to look at these root delusions, desirous attachment and anger, and how we can oppose them using different antidotes. So we'll start off by defining what a delusion is. So in general, it is a mental factor that arises from distorted attention, making the mind unpeaceful and uncontrolled. So when I look at this definition here, what really causes my attention towards it is this idea of distorted attention. That's the term I really like. You know, and I sort of like, what is that? So distorted attention, there's sort of like three levels of it. It's very subtle, and then it's called gross. So the very subtle is just basically our self-grasping, the natural self-grasping that we have at present. So it's ignorance in its seed form, meaning that we've always got this potential to distort anything that comes into our awareness. And it's just sitting there. When it sort of manifests in the way that, so that suddenly everything appears to be distinct from one another. Right? So in other words, a subject and object, like you and I, appear to be cut off from one another. And that whatever's appearing to our attention at that time appears either pleasant from its own side or unpleasant from its own side, or it just doesn't matter. Then when it comes out into its gross form, it's like we actually believe that is the case. And then it manifests in either attachment or anger or any of the other delusions. So here for one of the texts I used, there are many levels of distorted attention, from very subtle to very gross. Whenever ordinary beings see an object, they naturally apprehend it as being inherently existent. This grasping mind is itself an exaggeration and a subtle form of distorted attention. As a result of grasping things as being inherently existent, we exaggerate their attractiveness or unattractiveness, and thus develop serious attachment or anger. Whereas the initial development of self-grasping is subtle, distorted attention. The subsequent exaggeration of the good or bad qualities of the object is gross, distorted attention. Well, this distorted attention is a conception which misinterprets events, superimposes attractive or unattractive qualities onto people and objects, and then projects motivations and meanings on other people's words and activities. That's Samsara Nirvana, Buddha nature, page 107. This establishes the perfect setting for afflictions that haven't arisen to arise. That's a delusion in general. There's another term that's often used called affliction. And there's different ways of explaining what these are, but this is one of them, a simple one, I think. A mental factor that functions to disturb the mind stream of the person in whose continuum it occurs. So again, so this is from, now I'll say it's from Science and Philosophy in the Indian Buddhist Classics, Volume 2, The Mind, and this is on page 139. So it says the characteristic of being thoroughly disturbing should be understood as the definition of mental afflictions in general. And there are 6 types of disturbance. Disturbance due to distraction, disturbance due to distortion, disturbance due to excitation, disturbance due to dullness, and disturbance due to heedlessness, which is another emotion. It's just like you just don't care. And then from that, disturbance due to non-refraining. I know. Wow, I forgot to put that down.
Nice way of putting it, non-refraining.
Yeah, that's right. We don't stop ourselves. And so the disturbance really increases. So yesterday I gave a class on loving kindness. And one of the things about loving kindness is actually it's a sense of friendliness. It manifests as friendliness, friendly speech and actions. And then it went on further and said that the activity of friendliness is restraint from harming the other. again, so I really liked it. I thought, wow, that's how it works up there. But you think you're going to do something and you realize, no, that will hurt. That will hurt them or their people they love and so forth. You just restrain yourself there. That's friendliness. So again, I sort of, I like that sort of, if you can take it, make it really practical, find yourself, you actually do these things, you go, actually, I'm a friendly guy. I was demonstrating my sense of kindness towards others. I know that if I do this, it's not good for them. It's just something about me. So that's not friendly. Now, there are 6 root afflictions, and like I say, today we're focusing on attachment and anger, but there are others. So next week we're going to look at ignorance. But following on from that, there's another type of affliction called deluded pride. There's 6 forms of deluded pride. There's deluded doubt. I think there are 2 types of deluded doubt. And then there are these afflictive views. So there's 5 of those. So sometimes I talk about 10 afflictions, the 10 root afflictions, and that's because they've got 5 other afflictive views. Then they just talk about 6, and this is their number, and this is what they are. So they're called root afflictions because they're the primary causes of psychic existence. And they're the root or the cause of the 20 auxiliary afflictions. So from these 6, there's another 20 that come out of them. So often when you're studying like mind and mental factors, you start off with these 6, and then they go move across to the other 20. So we have these, what I've done is sort of broken up the teaching into sections. So we do a little bit like this, and then we stop and ask you what's interesting. Or if you find now's the time to ask questions and things like that, and I often will try to do my best to answer them. And then we'll often have a meditation. Cassandra.
It's actually about the side note that you said about love and kindness, being like refraining from harm. So does that mean it's more important to not harm than to do active kindness?
No, they sort of go together, but we begin by restraint. It's just like for the beginner, to stop doing the things that hurt.
That implies that our minds are disturbed and our instinct would be to.
That's right. Our instincts are being driven by self-grasping and self-cherishing. So we come first. And then we're not as concerned for others. Mickey, yes?
That list is really quite different from our Western idea of what the afflictive emotions are, I suppose, because doubt and wrong views aren't really emotions, are they? So we don't even think of them as a problem.
And attachment, people see it as a good thing.
Too. In the so they're sort of called pleasures or afflictions. So I think it's in the West we've added this other term called emotion, afflictive emotions, right? Or we should really just think of them as afflictive mental states, afflictive states of mind. Because in the Tibetan way of doing, there's no such word as emotion. But it's just put across as the West where we understand it easier. But it can mess it up a little bit.
Seems a little bit difficult in that sometimes you have to have a deep and meaningful with somebody and you know they're going to be hurt by it, not because you've said something hurtful, but because you've maybe given a boundary that they're going to be hurt by that boundary. It just makes it hard on a psychological level if you're trying to create boundaries with somebody and then you have to say something that's going to be hurtful.
Or maybe it's about intention.
If you withdraw,
I have the intentions to harm them, because we know that we can do things.
Yeah.
Sometimes the same thing, even the kind thing could be to harm somebody. You pray. People do that all the time. Oh, they don't like somebody's earrings and they look foolish. So they're like, oh, I like your earrings. Like they're saying the next thing, but it's most like a harmful thing.
I was going to say, so you bet, so there's another way of looking at this. So sometimes you'd ask you, so there's 4 ways here. So if we say something, we're trying to help or go these boundaries and it creates harm, in the short term and the long term, you don't do it. If it's harmful in the short term, but long term it's good, do it.
But what if it's not actually creating any harm? It's
What-
just
what-
something that needs to be said that you know is going to be hurtful.
That is-
Well, then it's harm.
Sorry.
It's harm. You just said hurtful.
Well, that's because of their perception. Say. For instance.
Yeah,
if
so
they
okay,
were-
so we've got two things, right? One is you
Yeah.
who's going to speak. What's your intention here? If it's not harm, so you're not creating any negative karma for yourself, right? So then you say what you're going to say, and then they're disturbed by it.
Yeah.
But so that's their business. You can't stop whether it's going to be hurtful or good or whatever, right?
Yeah. Otherwise, it feels like you're pandering to people all the time so that you don't hurt their feelings, but maybe there's something that needs to be said to keep the relationship honest.
Yeah, so you say it.
Yeah.
Yep, so, but again, it's like, so you go sort of look at them and go, okay, so one thing that we can know for sure, we cannot be sure of how another person is going to respond to us. All we can be sure of is like, what's our intention for speaking here? What's our intention for acting? So we're the ones that if we sort of think, okay, this is going to hurt. This might hurt them, but it's for their long-term benefit. So that I should, but right now, it's not doing any good just leaving it alone. So I am going to speak. I am going to act. And we know that, yeah, it might cause short-term harm, it might disturb their mind, but the purpose is to bring about long-term benefit. Then, if you think you can bear their upsetness, go ahead and speak or act. So you've got to sort of work out, what's it, short-term harm, long-term harm. Short-term harm, long-term benefit. Short-term benefit, long-term harm. Short-term benefit, long-term benefit. So you've got the four things again. And remember, this is coming from your side. You've got to work it out. You don't know from their side. None of us do. All we can look at is what we're doing. So you've got to keep remembering this. This Buddha Dharma is finally focused on the person who's practicing it and doing it. So you're going to meet lots of people who know nothing about Dharma. So you can't expect them to like take on what we know. But we've got to still act clearly from our side. Okay, let's go on. So we're going to start now having a look. We're going to look at virus attachment first. Then we'll have a little break. Then we'll look at the ways of opposing it.
Just online, there's been a lot of robust conversation, and Diana said that saying something to someone to set a boundary, as long as you're not intending to harm them when you say it, will benefit them in the long term, because a false relationship will harm them more in the long run. So,
Okay.
yeah, thanks.
There's lots to think about with this material. So this is how I've set this conversation out for us. So we start off with something. I'll define what it is. That's like the definition you see there. Then I'll show you how it develops, some of the derivatives from the phenomenon called desirous attachment, and how can we divide it up. Then we'll look at how we can oppose it. So desirous attachment So desirous attachment is a deluded mental factor that observes its contaminated object, regards it as a cause of happiness, and wishes for it. So the object is contaminated not from the side of the object, not necessarily there, but from our side, right? It's contaminated with our own karma and previous afflictions, self-grasping. So this mental factor keenly seeks to acquire something contaminated on account of conceiving it or thinking it to be intrinsically attractive. Meaning this, so suppose I'm looking at Sandy and I see Sandy being a very attractive woman that I want to have a relationship with, right? All the good qualities that I see in Sandy are coming from Sandy's side. So nothing really much to do with me. I just went around and saw her and went, oh, right? She's just great. This is what we might intrinsic. It's nothing to do with you. You know, so you've got the effect of no cause. Stephen.
Danny, what is that golden statue and why did you choose?
Okay. So this is a picture from a great film called Wings of Desire by Wim Wenders. Yeah, yeah, so fantastic, beautiful film.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is about angels. So he's an angel and he has this desire to know human beings. Yeah. So a beautiful film. Great dialogue.
Yes.
Yeah. So the function of attachment, like all of these afflictions, is to produce its resultant suffering. It's got no other function other than that. Cassandra?
Just clarify what contaminated means. Does that mean contaminated by afflictions? Or-
Yeah, in particular karma.
So, but the contamination can come from the subject.
Yeah, the subject side.
Yeah, because I was gonna say otherwise.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, it's more the subject side. Sometimes they use it like the external side too, like Cassandra, but that's just because it's like a chair, right? So now how is a chair contaminated or something like that? Well, through the people who made it, and how it can also cause suffering. Like if a chair hits you, like you get hurt. So there's also that aspect of it. Yeah, so all the objects can produce suffering, not as conditions. Yeah, that's right. Depends upon how you engage with it. That's the thing. So desirous attachment here is not the same as desire. We can have many. You can have desires that are quite useful and meaningful, like the desire to become enlightened, the desire to help other people. These are good desires. Desire to engage authentically in a spiritual path, to have a good relationship with a spiritual mentor. These are good desires, and they're not to be put aside. Let's have a look at the development of it. So it goes from very subtle to gross. So the very subtle desirous attachment is like in this seed form. It has this, we have this potential for desirous attachment to arise at any moment. So there are other ways of describing how it develops. And in the other ways of developing it, they talk about you have to have the seed, which is the cause. So the cause is on our mental strength. So this is this very subtle. It's been supported by self-cherishing. And this together, now it's like I said, we use like Sandy again, it's very Sandy. It's like can be designed like this. So now it's like on this next level is subtle, and so my self-cherishing is like this object, Sandy, so it's like just absolutely lovely. All the qualities that attracted me are from the side of Sandy. So this is the subtle. Did I, after class, make advances towards Sandy, right? So now myself, this desirous attachment is being expressed. This is where it's gross. So when you express it, it's at the gross level. At the subtle level, it will appear as if the object itself is happiness producing great from its own side. At the very subtle level, you have the seed of this. This is it's actually got something to do with you. But this is the thing driving it. All it needs to do is meet the condition. Sandy is the object condition. And Sue.
I remember in class,
up at Home Hills, somebody said that Alan Wallace said seeds are information. And I really
Okay.
like that. I just thought, that information's all present.
Yeah.
Sometimes seeds you tend to, I used to.
Yeah, no,
Contain things.
that's right.
Yeah.
yeah. That's a great one, Sue. Thank you. Seeds are information. Yeah. Information passed down from
Yeah.
lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. Yeah, and you've held on to it to be, it's true.
Yeah.
So at the level of gross attachment, so always, so like if I say, for instance, like I've got to see Sandy, or I've got to hear her voice, or smell her perfume, right? Some sort of either it arises through your senses, or I might be outside and I'm starting to think about it. Now that's conception. So it's either perception or conception. Often, one flows from the other, doesn't. You see the person or you hear their voice, and immediately the mind says something about that. Now, as soon as that happens, of course, you actually start to exaggerate the qualities of what you hear, see, smell, touch. And this exaggeration is like this idea that all these good qualities of the speech, what your sight, all that, are all coming from the object side. And only the good appears. None of the bad stuff appears. No information about disintegration of the aggregates or anything like that, right? Or an object that could produce suffering as well. No, it's all good. And then you believe it, of course. And then you sort of fuse with the belief, and now you have this whole feeling thing of attachment. So fusion came up a lot with Corey's talks. This is, you have the feeling of this object's a great object and so forth. And then you become a desirous person. Well, you forget in the way that you're thinking this, you become that. That's how you act, of course.
Eddie, with fusion, in fact, using your analogy with Sandy, in fact, that be the moment when I fall in love with all the qualities I
Projected. Yeah, that's right. Yep, that's dead right. Yep. Now, of course, there are many derivatives of desirous attachment. And what is this sort of like what they call a grasping and discontent, right? So whatever you have, you're not content with that anymore. This is a new object. And you often find that, there's a sense that you don't have it, but you want it. So this is this natural discontent. What can follow from it is that irrational passions for power and possessions. So like I'd want to possess Sandy.
Is the grasping discontent like when you're a bit bored and you think, oh, I think I'll go shopping? I'll go up shopping?
Yeah,
Is it like a general thing?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's quite subtle. Sandy?
Yes, that grasping discontent, you don't always know you have it until you got what you wanted, and then afterwards you're like, I must have wanted that to have
Yeah, that's right.
ended up with
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
It's smoking,
It's
you can, like, I'm like that for smoking. Until I'm smoking, I'm like, I must have wanted this.
that's right.
So I must have felt a discontent.
Content with the way things were.
something.
That's right. You're missing something. You want something. You need something more. Want something. That's
And
right.
it's invisible to you.
That's right. It's unconscious. That's right. Yeah. And it gets even, so one of the other derivatives are called a sense of dishonesty, disrespect, pretension, shamelessness, and concealment. There are quite a few others too. I'll just put these up.
Dennis just said, this completely describes the show that's called Bridgerton. I don't, never heard of it, but if you need to do some homework, there it is.
Okay.
Excellent.
And so there's also a way of dividing our desirous attachment up. And the first way is through entity. So in other words, you can have really big desirous attachment, middling, or small. And these three can also have, like, you can have a big, middling, and big, small. You can have middling, big, middling, and middling, small, small, big, small, middling, small, small. So 9 divisions in terms of the entity itself. It says, from the point of view of the entity, desirous attachment can be divided into 3, big, middling, and small, or into 81. The 9 levels of desirous attachment of each of 9 realms.
I don't quite get what entity is.
Itself, attachment.
Oh, okay.
The entity attachment, desirous attachment itself.
It's the size.
Yeah, the way, yeah, the fact that,
Heroin addiction.
yeah, that's right,
Really extreme.
or an extreme.
One chocolate in the afternoon, it's like medium maybe.
Well, it could be not depends. Could be quite extreme. Yeah.
Eddie, when is it saying about like heroin being extreme and chocolate maybe lesser? Is this to do with its effect?
Yeah, it's the thing that,
If the
no.
chocolate in the afternoon doesn't really affect you, you just feel like it might have it. It's, you don't eat so much, you get sick, then does it not matter as much?
No, so you can notice sometimes how your desire can increase.
So is it about your desire, not about its health? It's.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah,
desire,
it's
your
not-
own desire itself, the entity of desire, desirous attachment. Yeah. So they say, yeah, the most grossest is what is the attachment of the desire realm, the one that we, so we're here. We're the ones who can develop the most of it. The most subtle is called the small desirous attachment of the peak of samsara. So it's a very subtle mind, but it's just about to leave samsara, isn't it? So it's very small attachment there. Even in the form and formless realms, you've still got attachment. And that's what they're talking about here.
So we have plenty of attachments around us.
Yeah, and in the Pali tradition, this is the major problem, eh?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
So what's the major problem?
This attachment from the Pali perspective, yeah, it's this craving, grasping, attachment. Then we can also talk about in terms of object, which we'll come to shortly, and then also in terms of time. So in terms of the entity, like I said, it's big, middling, small. But in terms of object, we can have a desirous attachment to places. So many of us do.
Yeah.
Some of you might have more attachment to your home than a hotel, for instance. Or Japan rather than here. And there are our enjoyments, like our chocolate, our coffee, our music, the movies, all sorts of things.
Okay.
Sorry?
What about electric?
Ooh, these ones. Yep, there we get these.
If you want a person's thing, like your own person, I thought that would be the strongest thing of attachment.
Well, yeah, you have, so the body of the person yourself, right? So you have attachment to your body.
You can have that to your mind.
To your identity.
You know, your identity as a person.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, I think that's more to do with the
For us, pride, status. But
yes,
you know,
and it could even be like in terms of the entity, like the grasping itself to oneself.
Yeah.
Yeah, could cover there. Yeah. And then also in terms, so we've also got this grasping in terms of the having desires attachment to objects of the past itself, things happening in the present, and then things that happen in the future. So so a lot of our desires attachment is focused on the future. Just sort of interesting.
Yeah, for people that are very kind of stuff.
Yeah. Even though we may never acquire these objects, nevertheless, due to this type of attachment, we spend much time planning or daydreaming about them. This is this future. Attachment to future objects is the basis for most of our discontent and disappointment.
So this is like with the future, wanting things to change,
Yeah.
wanting things to be different to
Yeah.
what they are.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Attachment to future outcomes. Attachment to future outcomes. Or even just desiring them and then having this attachment to them.
Well, often when people are planning to get married, it's like that
Oh,
whole
yeah,
idea,
sure.
isn't it? The future, perfect.
That's
future.
right. Yeah.
If you can get past the perfect.
Yeah.
That's right. So there's so much disappointment on that, and anxiety about having a perfect wedding day. So let's do a short meditation. Again, just adjust your posture, get comfortable in your seat, so make sure your back is straight. So imagine that you've heard the definition of desirous attachment. And you can remember its definition. You do remember that it was called a deluded mental factor that observes its contaminated object and what followed. It's a deluded mental factor that observes its contaminated object and regards it as a cause of happiness and desires it. And you remember that desirous attachment arose in 3 stages. And they were very subtle, and gross. And the gross desirous attachment itself had sort of 4 parts. So how does it begin? So it begins with a sight, or a sound, smell, a taste, a touch, or an idea. And then there's confusion. So what are the objects of this desirous attachment? They are places, bodies, and enjoyments of the past, present, or future. So what happens when desirous attachment engages its object? Well, the objects, there's a sense of distortion and exaggeration. So only the good qualities appear. And the good qualities seem to exist from the side of the object. So why don't you imagine now an object that you might have desirous attachment towards and see if this is the case. Do the good qualities appear to come from the object? Does the object itself seem to possess these good qualities? And do you believe that appearance? I think it's true. And what happens then? There's a sense of fusion. and we become a desirous person. We fuse with desirous attachment. So how large could a desirous attachment be? And of the derivatives of desirous attachment, but what follows? Passion, possessiveness, dishonesty, pretension, shamelessness, sorrow. Is that what you want? So if not, what might you be able to do? So perhaps we don't know what to do, but we'll find out shortly. We're just breathing in now, exhale, and we'll go up to the antidotes. So now we're going to talk about the antidotes. So we need to abandon desirous attachment. So this is eradication of it. And we can eradicate it in two ways, temporarily and completely. And when we do it temporarily, the best way to do it is, and the easiest way is, first of all, look at its faults. So this is like Sandy was saying, you use the cigarette, the smoking example, right? First thing is you do, if you want to stop smoking, you look at all the faults, don't you? Decide, no, I'm not going to smoke. It's got all these bad outcomes. So it's the same with desirous attachment. We look at the negative side of it.
Which balances it up.
Yeah. So one of the things what I read just recently was the teacher was saying what makes it really hard to eradicate desirous attachment is that you've got to calm down first. He said, well, while the mind is agitated and excited, you can't do it. It's really, really hard. So you need to have a sort of calm down, like sit down and breathe, calm right down, and then objectively look at this phenomenon called desirous attachment. So remember here, when we do this, we're not looking at the object, right? We're looking at the object is desirous attachment, not the person or the cup or the car. It's desirous attachment. What does it do? You know, you could say, well, it's exaggerating all the object immediately. It's making it appear much better than it is. Seems as if all the good qualities are coming from the object itself. That's not true. I play a part in this, you know. So I'm being completely misled by desirous attachment. So we look at these different faults. So there's faults like within this life, and there's also the faults that future lives. We can also look at basically through desirous attachment and ignorance that we're here. So there are the faults. Then we can look at the other one is called impermanence. There's another way of looking to bring about a temporary cessation of the desirous attachment. You know, especially with people, you know, when you look at a person who looks lovely, you never think, gee, if I really, you know, you don't think, wow, if I'm in this relationship with them, 40 years or 50 years time, they're not going to look the way they look now. Right? Never think that, do we? We just think, well, if I haven't, it's always going to be like this. It's impossible. But that's how the mind works. So impermanence is a wonderful technique to look at this. And then ugliness. So especially when we look at, like I said, if you look at objects, what attachment does is it exaggerates the good qualities. Or if we keep looking at the good qualities, that's no way to decrease attachment. We've got to look at the other side. And that would be. So I remember when my wife died, right? So she's lying there, there's a corpse on the bed. And I'm looking at her thinking, geez, I don't feel any sexual desire for her now. And I wouldn't if it was 2 weeks later. It would be much desiring more. You just want to get it out of there, wouldn't you? You know, so this way of, you got to project forward, or else go underneath the skin and go, what do you find attractive now?
There's a famous Japanese painting about that of a prostitute looking absolutely gorgeous, and then a corpse, and then rotting, and then skeleton, all these different frames.
Yeah. So this is what you can do this temporarily. These are the major techniques, but there are others as well, which I'll show you shortly. But then if you really want to put an end to it, there's two ways. You have to decide to stop the causes of it. So this is where you recognize actually desirous attachment is really problematic. It's a cause for all the problems I get myself into. So I can't follow this desirous attachment. I've got to stop myself. Of course, the way you can really tamper it down is through using concentration. You concentrate your mind on some aspect of that object or some other object. And then there's emptiness. So this emptiness is really, that cuts the whole thing completely. The wisdom realizing emptiness of inherent existence.
That's because you realize that none of what you're seeing is in the object.
That's right. Yeah. If you think about it, really, even from a Western psychology point of view, is that they talk about projection. And that's basically what we're doing.
Demi's just saying it's really hard to remember to do it, especially at the beginning of attachment, because with aversion we have an incentive to, but at the beginning with attachment, we need to let it go.
That's right. That's right. Attachment's much harder than anger, you'll see. Anger's worse, but it's easier to work with. Attachment's very difficult. So here's one of the methods. And this is from that
Gunther von Hagen's Body Worlds.
yeah, this picture's taken from that. But the quote is from Practical Ethics and Profound Emptiness. So this is Nagarjuna. So he says, one who lies with this filthy mess, covered with skin, moistened by those fluids, is doing nothing more than lying on the other's bladder. I feel like cracked up laughing about this last night, right? Bladder time, dear. Yeah, that's right. So this is the sort of thing to really help you. To go, that'll put a break on it. And it's really, I found it quite amazing, like to how you can shut down attachment so quickly. All you got to do is just bring this in, it's like, it's gone. Thought, wow, just like that. Now you don't, your desire was there a minute ago, and within seconds it's gone. Because you're focusing on the ugliness. It's like, shit, there's nothing to desire about ugly things.
You Lauren's still got a headache.
Actually, isn't it the desire that then makes, say, what's under the flesh look ugly? That if we didn't have desire, we'd see what's under the flesh and go, wow, how excellent it all works. It wouldn't appear ugly to our mind.
No, that's right. So yeah, this is the thing that so the other thing is like when desirous attachment doesn't get what it wants, it turns into disappointment, anger.
Every relationship.
Yeah, that's right. Like every relationship ever, right? That's yeah.
Diane's asking, so are relationships considered bad?
No. Attachment based on desirous attachment are. Yeah, it's desirous attachment. It's not the relationship. It's not what's under the skin that's the problem. It's like here, we can use it really usefully.
And also Demi says as a health professional, because she sees under the skin all the time, she doesn't get repulsed by these images at all.
No. That's right.
But that we get,
That's right. Exactly. It. But are you turned on by them, Debbie? The same ask. Yeah, probably not. So actually we did this. when we covered this topic, we were doing this topic in the Lamb Chimney, one of our students said, yeah, I've got this lovely vase, and I know she has desirous attachment, but ugliness doesn't work. She says, I can't use this agitated ugliness, about the vase. It always looks beautiful. What's ugly about it? So, well, you know what it came from? Dirt. And the dirt got mixed up with water, so it's like mud. So you could do it that, but like again, it takes work, doesn't it? You have to break it down.
But a lot of objects we can also think about how they were created and how it looks like maybe in factories and like stuff like that, and see the ugliness behind the beauty.
That's right. So I often think that when you go to cities and you see these wonderful old buildings and people think that, I don't, I see the suffering that was taken to build it. Man, the convict labour, especially in Australia, these old buildings. Anyway, so here are what they call the 5 purifiers for attachment. So we come up with the first 3, but here's another list. So meditation is on the feeling of suffering. So this is, desirous attachment is actually rooted in suffering, and its nature is suffering. But that's not how it appears to us. So we've got to sort of remind ourselves of that and then look at it. So I remember one time, it was many years ago, but you feel attracted to another woman, you've just met her. And I was sitting there feeling it, watching myself and going, oh my God, if this is what we call love, this is not a pleasant feeling. I'm really confused and agitated, right? And I think, gee. So that whole thing is, you're out of control and you know it. So this is painful, unpleasant. So the other thing you can do here is, like, suppose I like again, we'll use Sandy again. So I think Sandy's got this wonderful body, but then I could, look at, well, actually, there's plenty of bodies that are better than that. So one they often give is, when you're attached to the tea of samsara, think about the tea that's in the Pure Lands elsewhere, right? So, in fact, there's a great story of.
The burgers are better in Tashita.
That's right. The tea and the burgers are better in Tashita. The food is better in the Holy Lands than they are right here. So we don't have so much attachment to the objects here.
How do you be careful not to just compare it to something else that you then become attached to? Like I'm thinking a lot of people's partners looking on Instagram at beautiful women and then thinking, why does my partner look like that?
That's right.
Breeds more.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So, but this is this idea of going, losing the attachment for the beauty of the partner, right? Knowing that there's other beauty, there's other bodies that are much more beautiful. Now, if you possibly want that, then you have to do it again. Then you see, geez, there's no end to attachment. But then, like I said, so then it's this thing, you've got the Buddhist idea, right? Then you move to the mental body and go, actually, mental bodies are much better than physical bodies. And I need a mental body of Buddhahood. The bodies of Buddhas are mental. The deities' bodies are mental. So that's a much better body to have. The body of Tara is not a physical body. And so I remember you saying that one time, you said, wow, the desire that men have for the body of the woman, the body of Tara is so much greater, right? But it's not a physical body.
That's probably especially helpful to overcome the attachment to one's own body.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, Cassandra. That's right. Unpleasantness of the bad activities. So this is like, we engage in activities that we think are, for instance, I was just thinking here, I have to say, what I like eating is cream, apple pies with cream. Apple turnips. That's but I forget the karmic outcomes. Right? So we know there's bad health outcomes for me to be engaging in eating sweet things with cream. But there's, and like Krishna was saying yesterday, wasn't he? Saying, many of the lamas really like Coca-Cola, and then they have to be introduced to
Diabetic.
they're all diabetic, so they have to be told this is the problem with Coca-Cola. And so, oh, okay. put aside Coca-Cola, drop your attachment for Coca-Cola. But here you can see this fellow like drinking and getting drunk, and of course once that happens, you lose all your ability to practice Dharma, you do silly things, and it's got karmic outcomes, future outcomes,
Plus a hangover.
plus a hangover. Yeah. So here we're looking at course and subtle impermanence. So I'll start off putting up a picture of a young, beautiful woman, and then over time, of course, the beauty changes. And then this is the one that pleasant, the unpleasant, looking beneath the skin. So here are 5 other ways we can use to. So this term purifying attachment means it's just to hinder it. It doesn't mean you don't have it altogether. That only comes with wisdom, realizing emptiness. So purifying is just like putting a blocker or a hindrance. So again, no doubt there's lots of material that you'll find interesting about this, especially when you're related to your own lives and the lives of people you know who, through following desirous attachment problems, big problems. Okay, meditation time. Again, just getting comfortable in your seat or standing or lying down, whichever feels best for you. You can keep your eyes open or closed. I want you to imagine that you can actually acknowledge the presence of attachment. So you know what attachment feels like when it's directed towards an internal, enjoyable experience or a specific external object, which could be a place, an enjoyment, or a body. In other words, I want you to know that feel the presence of attachment is towards a place, an enjoyment, or a body, so that you know what it feels like. And you understand that if attachment is unchecked, it can lead to immeasurable forms of suffering. Whereas if you could transform it, it could be a condition for enlightenment. So imagine considering the transient and contaminated nature of the object of your attachment. You could reflect intellectually on the impermanence and impurity of the object. And you can recognize that the qualities you are attached to do not inherently exist in the object itself. So then imagine shifting your perspective to become disillusioned with the seemingly attractive qualities of the object. Imagine realizing that your mind distorts the perception of these objects, superimposing qualities that aren't there. Imagine cultivating a sense of renunciation and then internalizing your focus, meaning holding on to this idea of renunciation, abandoning desirous attachment. So how might you stop your sense faculties wandering towards objects that generate desirous attachment? What could you do? Stop your mind being overrun by desire. Now, with time and practice, aim to reach a state where you do not feel powerful attachment, even in the presence of those objects. And then again, breathe in through your nostrils. Exhale. Open your eyes, and we'll come back to the next section. So here, like I was saying, when desirous attachment doesn't get what it wants, it flips and goes into anger. And again, so I've set it up by first we're going to define it and see how it's developed, its derivatives, divisions, and finally the antidotes. So anger is a deluded mental factor that observes its contaminated object. So you can see it's very much like the other one, like desirous attachment. Deluded mental factor that observes its contaminated object, exaggerates its bad qualities, considers it to be undesirable and wishes to harm it. It's like the opposite, isn't it, of the desirous attachment. Desirous attachment to possess it, see only the good here, anger, see only the bad and want to harm it. Yeah, it's like the pendulum. We've swung out here and now we've gone up the other way. Yeah, it acts as in sort of a way of like pushing away anything that harms our sense of permanence.
That mean without the wish to harm,
Yeah, that's right.
but you just like see something as bad and you don't see it as desirable.
To hurt it or harm it.
Don't
Or
wanna harm it.
that's
You
right.
Don't like it.
Yep, that's right. That's not anger. No, that's right. That's not anger. So again, in terms of this development, we've got the self-grasping. So the seed of anger is on our potential. The information of being angry many, many times in the past, it's on the mind stream. Along with the self-grasping, the self-cherishing. And then there's the actual affliction of it. We're actually angry. And as you probably know, sometimes your anger is just like resentful, but other times you actually want to smash the thing. Right? So you can see there's an arc. We're either sitting there thinking about something of the past, present, or future, or we're actually engaging somewhat with our vision, our sense of smell. You can smell bad smells. Do you want to harm the bad smell? No, but we want to get away from it. But you're not going to be angry. But there's going to be an object of either your senses or your conception, your thinking. And you're going to exaggerate the bad qualities of it. Then you're going to believe it. You're going to believe in what you've exaggerated. And then you're going to want to do something to it. So sometimes what you want to do is just get away from it. So that's not anger. But anger's going to, you're going to hurt the thing, harm the object. So I was thinking about this, but Khensa Rinpoche told us a story about how one time he was late to teachings and he had to sit at the very back of the room. And just outside we were sitting with the latrines and there's a terrible smell. And he was going like, oh, poo, this terrible, this sticky smell, really bad smell. Right? So he's thinking that and he went, hang on a minute, that's impossible. He said, this is my karma. Right? So he remembered he's got the seed of aversion on his mind stream. And this is exaggerating the smell. And then he's adding the small stuff to it, and then he called himself a wet. So, similar thing happened to him until I was on a bus. This poor guy, it was early in the morning, but he must have been at one of those early opener pubs, and he'd come in and he'd pooed his pants, and he got on the bus, right? And then the smell just went through the bus. And I'm sitting there, same thing, and I just remembered Geshen's story. Oh, it's the same thing that's happening to me, like right now. No need to exaggerate the sense of the smell. Think about it's only terrible smell for you because of your own karma. You know, and it was like suddenly you're able to be patient and just bear it, and you go, oh, the poor man.
So the seed being the self-grasping, but then the self-cherishing part, is that when you start worrying about your own self, you know, in that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. The focus like on the bus for me, it's only it's just me, isn't it? It's not like, but you look around, everybody else is going like, oh God, you know, or even the other person, isn't it?
Oh,
Like
the
oh,
God,
that's
yeah.
right. Yeah. And again, we have derivatives. For me, I've noticed this just before I get angry, I'm confused. The sense of agitation and the sense of, you know, for me, self-centered pride again. So it's all about like me. And then, of course, it can manifest in these different ways. We can become cruel, resent what's going on, wrath, and even vengeance. And again, other factors are these dishonesty, disrespect, pretension, and concealment. So this type of presentation here I got from Geshe Tashi Sering's book on Buddhist psychology. Yeah. Again, there's in terms of the divisions of anger, the entity, the object, and then how it's induced. So in terms of entity, we've got big, middling, small. So there's 9 there. And I'll show you how this sort of works shortly, but I'll bring the others up. The object is this sentient beings, one's own suffering. Because you can be really angry towards your own suffering, wish to like harm it, which in some ways is might want to harm it with the wisdom realizing emptiness. But then also circumstances. Yeah, so circumstances could be like what often happens with me is like the printer doesn't work. You know, so I get really cranky.
You're not alone, Eddie.
And when it's induced, we can, like I said, induce it towards ourselves. Many of us do this. We harm ourselves through bad ways of thinking, unskillful ways of thinking, friends and enemies. So here's one way of looking at it. So this is called the 9-fold division of anger from the point of view of how it is generated. So you can have anger towards someone or something that harmed us in the past. Anger towards someone or something that is harming us now. Anger towards someone or something that might harm us in the future. So that's oneself. Right? Then you think anger towards someone or something that might harm our friends or relatives in the past, present, or future.
So this is not the object of the anger.
No, the anger itself. Yeah, that's right. We always have the anger. There's this different object. Because if it's that object, is that we create anger in relation to the objects of the past, present, future.
So it's saying, for example, with ourselves is that we're angry at an object that is harming us rather than we're angry at ourselves.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Then it could be anger towards someone or something that helped our enemies in the past, helping our enemy now, or might help our enemy in the future.
Well, all of those things that you mentioned, Eddie, is where, especially in the TV shows, people say, I'm a nice, kind, patient person, except if you harm my family, or except if you help my enemy.
That's right.
No, that's it, because I don't, I was looking and I was like, oh, I don't really get a lot of anger towards sentient beings, but I do get a lot of anger towards circumstances and also my own suffering, and also because of what happens to other people rather than what happens to me. But so I didn't, it's very helpful.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, when I look at this material, Cassandra, I always marvel, like, man, the thinking that would have gone into this over, but then again, you've got centuries to do it, haven't you? From the Buddha and then.
Understand. Like,
yeah, that's right.
If what might be going through your own
Yeah, that's right. So there's a lot to consider with this, and we should. So, but let's do a quick meditation again. So you've heard how anger was defined, and you can remember its definition. So you remember that anger was called a deluded mental factor that observes its contaminated object, and then what does it do? It exaggerates its bad qualities, it considers it to be undesirable, and it wishes to harm it. So it's got these three parts. It's a deluded mental factor that observes its contaminated object, exaggerates the bad qualities, considers them to be undesirable, and wishes to harm it. And you remember that anger arose at those three stages, and they began with very subtle and followed with subtle and gross. And the anger itself developed over time. It could begin with a sight or sound, smell, a touch, a taste, or an idea. And then there's a sense of confusion. So what are the objects anger can be directed towards? There are sentient beings, there are circumstances, and suffering itself. And what induces anger? What sort of produces it? The first is harm directed at ourselves, and what else? Our friends, and then whatever benefits our enemies. So how does anger distort or exaggerate the qualities of the object? Only the unpleasant quality appears. The quality seems to exist from the side of the object. And do you believe it? I think yes. Then fusion and our anger can increase in size. So what are some of the derivatives of anger? What might follow? Self-centered pride, resentment, disrespect, cruelty, sorrow, and regret. Is that what you want? If not, what can we do? Well, breathe in through your nostrils, exhale, allow your awareness to come back to the screen and to the class, and we'll look at how we can abandon anger. So again, we've got this process of eradication which is temporary and complete. In terms of the temporary, again, we just look at the faults. You begin with the faults, and the major ways to put a temporary stop into anger is through patience and through loving kindness. There are many, many other antidotes too, but these are sort of main ones. And in terms of to completely bring it to an end, you've got to sort of bring to your own mind the sense of abandonment. It's called renunciation. But anger is a cause for great suffering. So it hurts us, it hurts others. I read that story now, if you want to revenge, dig two graves. Yeah, one for the person you get and one for yourself. So we've got to decide that it's really harmful for us and for others. We need to not engage in it. But the complete eradication of it, again, is through the wisdom, realizing the emptiness of inherent existence.
Actually, Eddie, that they just said on the news yesterday about with Israel and Gaza, one of the Israeli politicians was saying we're going to turn Gaza into a graveyard. But this is it, isn't it? It's going
That's
to be
right.
two graveyards.
Yeah, graveyard contains us and them. So in terms of the faults of anger, there are ways of looking at these faults. So one of them is what they call the future fault. Now, so if we have anger now, there's a consequence of it that takes place in the future. And what is it? What they call fruitional rebirth. So the lower realm rebirths, rebirth in the animal realms, rebirth in the hungry ghost realms. These are all consequences of anger. Most of us forget this and just think about what happens now. So we've got to remember this.
But it sort of does happen now, doesn't it? And it culminates in being in the lower realms, but you experience lower realm suffering.
Yeah, it's just not as intense as the actual realm. That's right. Because we're humans. But we can only, because we're humans, we can only experience it. We experience it in this realm.
In this realm.
Yeah.
But it's just the victims that experience the suffering. It's usually in the short term, it's not the perpetrators that experience that fruitional suffering.
Yeah. Oh, we do. Well, yeah, the perpetrator is like a little bit of, it's not, yeah, it's bad, but it's not too bad. But the people, the objects you do, that's much, much worse, isn't it? So here we're looking at like ourselves and Sandy's saying, yeah, we do it like it's lower realm here, but to a very, very small degree to the actual realm. Because this body and our biological system's temperate. So we've got to remember in the future, these terrible outcomes. And just like right now, right? So just if you mentioned Gaza, so we have in our environment war is the worst outcome, one of the very worst outcomes of anger. But it can also produce epidemics. And in terms of your environment, you could find, barren land surrounded by dangerous animals. In terms of causally concordant results, the behavior is repeated. So I've said it, told a number of times about the behavior of my father and other men of his generation too. But they expressed their anger and they just kept on doing it. It was their way of getting what they wanted, so they just kept doing it. In terms of the experience of it oneself, torment right now, fear, suspicion, paranoia. So one time I spent some time in jail, and I was bright enough, smart enough, not to ever express anger at anybody. Why? Because they can come at you anytime and get you. They can get their mates to get you. It's terrible. So now you walk around paranoid, scared all the time. Well, below that, I'd rather not have that. I'd rather just get on with everybody. So even though it's difficult, I would not allow my disappointments and difficulties to be expressed with angry language. Because the future outcomes are terrible.
Often very powerful or cruel people are also incredibly paranoid and
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And of course you would be, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you be? It's natural because you've heard all these people.
Yeah, and that's who everyone else thinks like as well. I think people generally think everyone else thinks like oh, they.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So if you're a fearful, paranoid, angry person, gee, the whole world's like that. So these are the faults of anger, but like I said, there are many, many antidotes for anger. The great thing about anger is being a fault, it's so obvious, right? And it's sharp and then it disappears pretty quickly. And there's, like I said, lots and lots of antidotes. So other methods you can question your logic, just ask yourself, is it true what you're thinking? This is a real good one. Remember the quality of oneself and others, and that all of us are driven by karma and delusion. You can also transform your attitude, like when others are angry at you, instead of responding with anger, like because you feel this anger, and you go, self-harm has returned. My ego grasping is being hurt. See, that's good. Ego grasping, you caused it, now you get it back. And you also think, well, I've experienced this, may others be free of it. And finally, there's the transmutation practices through high yoga tantra. Miffy.
Just on that second one, equality, I've found a really powerful shortcut, especially thinking about politics, is instead of just saying Israel and Palestine, I think Israeli people and Palestinian people, and it cuts out my anger.
Okay. Yeah, but there's people that get angry, isn't it? Not, the states or the big thing. It's some people.
All
Yeah.
they're both sides, they're all people,
Yeah,
just like
right.
me.
Yeah. And people aren't their emotions. People aren't their behavior. People have behavior. People have bad emotions. But it's not the people. So this also helps me. You want to really get to the source of it, you have to approach anger. And what drives anger? Self-grasping ignorance. Ignorance is behind it all. Ignorance is the actual enemy. So last meditation, folks. Again, we're just going to call upon our imagination. I want you to imagine that you know when your anger is directed towards sentient beings, inanimate objects, or situations. Because this awareness is crucial for applying the appropriate antidotes. So when your anger is directed towards others, what antidote could you focus your attention upon? Focus on being patient, friendliness, love, compassion, karma. So imagine cultivating feelings of love and compassion, because these directly counter feelings of anger and hostility. Like how? Because these emotions are naturally incompatible with each other. So now I want you to imagine anger being directed towards an inanimate object. And I want you to try and break the object down into its basic elements. The object itself probably has some sort of hardness or solidity, forms of energy within it, or malleability. The analysis will help in diluting the anger. Like how? By understanding the composite nature of the object. So now imagine a situation in which you feel averse. Something is happening, you don't like it, and you want to get away from it. You want to separate yourself from it. What would be the causes? Acknowledge previous karma and circumstances which are beyond your control. This perspective will help in accepting the situation. It will reduce feelings of anger and frustration. If you can, imagine remembering the teachings from Shantideva. Our anger is profoundly destructive. How its harm potentially ruins merits accumulated over thousands of eons. And finally, realize the severe consequences of anger. Here now, past, and if we don't transform it, the future. But finally, imagine being motivated to transform the mind so that it is no longer angry. And then breathing in through your nostrils, exhale through the mouth. Allow your eyes to flutter open and know that you are in front of the screen or on a seat or in this room. And which brings us to the end of our class. So that, you all know there's these 6 root delusions. We looked at attachment and anger today, but there are others. And you know what they are, but they're deluded mental factors that are exaggerating either the good or the bad qualities, and either wanting the good or wanting to harm the bad. And you know some antidotes to these. So next week, we're just going to focus on what they call self-grasping ignorance. It's going to be interesting. There's lots of forms of ignorance and ways of looking at it, and how we can oppose it. And other than that, on the website, on pages 17 to 19, there's some material from the FPMT, and pages 29 to 35 or 58 to 65 put up there by myself. So everyone's kept their attention awake, be able to focus on the class, so no one's lost their energy. So we take this energy and we're going to direct it towards overcoming these delusions like desirous attachment and anger, and doing so because we're motivated to attain enlightenment for the benefit of others. So let's dedicate our energy, our merit to that goal. And join me in saying, due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the Supreme Jewel Bodhicitta, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline but increase forevermore. And as long as space remains, as long as living beings remain, may I too remain to dispel the sorrows of the world. And finally, we're going to make an aspirational prayer for the Rinpoche's swift return. So Rinpoche was a great teacher on the faults of anger and desirous attachment, and always encouraged us to cultivate and develop the mind of enlightenment. So join me in saying, in holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make this request. Okay, thank you everyone here. Thank you all those online.
Thanks very
Okay,
much,
but-
Eddie. Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome to come up and join us for a couple of teas and biscuits. And